Is making music hard for you? Wow, that sucks. Can't help you there. Look, making music can be hard, but it doesn't have to be. Since I started my music journey over 10 years ago, I have spent a million hours not making music while making music. Thankfully, however, I've learned a ton of tips and tricks along the way to speed up my production skills and spend more time writing bangers and less time doing... Yeah, so here are the most useful tips and tricks every producer should know. And I'm not gonna be one of those channels that gets all annoying and asks you to subscribe, because I'm just gonna tell you to. Subscribe. Right now. For the first tip, let's start with the beginning of a song. One important thing I've learned over many years is that when it comes to hearing a song for the first time, people have a very short attention span. It's extremely important to start your song with something catchy and unique that doesn't repeat over and over and over. Sell the song to your listener. So jump into the bulk of the song as soon as possible without it feeling forced, and I guarantee that people will be more likely to listen to your song all the way through. For most songs, this can be done by starting with the chorus or a stripped version of the chorus, or simply immediately starting the song with vocals.
Right now, I'm laying in bed with nobody to love, and my ex is probably out having fun hooking up.
And for a lot of EDM tracks, you can start by teasing the main drop melody with a short build-up in the intro or something like that, and then transition it to the next part of the song. Speaking of transitions, having clean transitions can make or break how your song flows together. Use things like sweeps, reversed one-shots, impacts, and crashes to make each section of your song seem more impactful. And if your song has vocals, here's a cool trick you can use to make them seem less abrupt. Take your vocal and chop it to just the first word on a new track. Then open Edison and make sure on input mode is on, and hit record. Then just play the vocal and leave a little bit of blank space after you stop recording. Then hit this button to add reverb and turn the dry % down and the wet % to somewhere around here. Then hit accept and click and drag this button into the playlist, where you can then reverse it, change the declicking mode to smooth or crossfade, trim it, and line it up with your vocal for a clean, super effective vocal transition. Atmosphere. Using things like Foley, vinyl, atmospheric loops, and ambient pads can help create a more full sounding track. Listen how this sounds without atmosphere and with atmosphere. Learn your macros and shortcuts. Whatever DAW you're using has shortcuts to make your life easier, so use them. If you're new to producing, or you've always just preferred to do things the hard way, try taking a sticky note and write down all of the shortcuts that you find most useful. Then spend some time forcing yourself to use those shortcuts while messing around in a new project. The goal for this is not to write a song or anything like that, but to just get used to these shortcuts. You can also map them to macros on your keyboard or mouse if you have something like that, and it'll speed up your production tenfold. High pass everything. Well, almost everything. It might not seem useful, but things like your cymbals, snares, pads, atmospheric loops, etc. all have a very small amount of low or even mid-range frequencies that you can't necessarily hear in your mix, but are definitely adding up, killing your headroom. If you don't know what headroom is, it's basically the amount of volume you have left before you hit 0 dB on your master. The lower this is, the easier it will be to master your track and prevent issues later on in your songwriting journey. Know your audience. I think it's very important for people to realize that the average person listening to your tracks isn't going to know how complicated the bass patch is or how clean the snare sits in the mix. So while it is necessary to make a good mix, don't let your songwriting creativity suffer because you're overthinking about how clean everything is. It is almost always better to have a catchy melody and memorable chord progressions with an average mix than to have a boring song with the cleanest mix you've ever heard. Most people probably don't care. You don't need expensive equipment to make good music. Throwing back to the last tip, if you can focus on making something catchy and interesting for the listener, then you don't need the most expensive studio monitors or $10,000 microphones when you're only starting out. So here's a good list of quality equipment that won't break the bank. Have you ever noticed that your song on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube always sounds different compared to the one in your project file? This is because of a thing called LUFS. Loudness is measured on a scale of perceived loudness rather than using an exact decibel amount. For example, if I play this short white noise clip but boost the volume a ton, and then compare it to a much quieter but longer white noise clip, it seems like the longer white noise clip is louder despite the fact that the actual decibel reading is much lower. This is because we perceive an average loudness higher than an immediate short-term loudness. So in our tracks, even if there are small loudness peaks that hit 0 dB, our ears are mostly focusing on how loud the average volume of the section is. On platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and many more, they limit the amount of LUFS a certain song can be, as seen here. So by making your track as loud as possible, you might be accidentally forcing these platforms to penalize your loudness and ruin the dynamic ranging your song. Listen and analyze professional songs. A great way to get a better sounding mix without struggling too much is to use spectrum and frequency analyzers while listening to your favorite professional tracks. While doing this, look for patterns in the data that you can use to get a definitive answer on what you're supposed to be doing regarding your mix. For example, if you can see this range of frequencies is consistently very wide in radio-ready songs on the same genre, then it might be smart to focus on stereo imaging that section of frequencies for your own track to match the professional one. Use acapellas from songs you like and make an instrumental as if you've never heard that song before, or just treat it like a remix with the intention of removing the acapella at the end of the song. This will help spark creativity and increase workflow if you're ever feeling stuck, and it's a great way to make something in a certain vibe that you or an artist you're working with is going for. Use MIDI chord packs. If you're unsure of what direction you want the song to go in, try adding some MIDI chord progressions from sample packs to quickly get a vibe going and lay down your track faster. Unless the chord progression has a melody built into it, using basic music theory chord progressions is a must to spark inspiration in the studio. And if anyone tries to tell you that's cheating, then just gaslight them. Organize your sample packs. Spend a day or two going through your thousands of sample packs, unless they're from Elation sounds, of course, and save all of the samples you find most useful into a separate folder. Then organize those samples into folders like kicks, snares, hi-hats, etc., and set your DAW to only use that folder. You'll save hundreds of hours of searching through samples this way. And feel free to always add new and interesting samples you like to this folder to help inspire your next studio session. Save your old tracks. If you're getting tired of a song and feeling uninspired, that could just be because you've heard it too many times. Don't be scared to switch to a new project and force yourself to forget the way your old song sounded. Just remember to keep them organized in a place where you'll be able to go back and listen to them. After producing for months or even a few years, you'll have an insane amount of projects to go through when you're feeling uninspired, and it might be worth it to listen to them again with a fresh set of ears and possibly an improved skill set. There's never really going to be one trick that makes your songs better. That's something that you'll have to face relatively early. For the most part, you could watch 1,000 videos on tips and tricks and subscribe to Elation and still not get any better unless you put those tips to use and practice with a workflow that best suits you. At the end of the day, if you're not putting in the hours, you can't expect the results.
You don't have to enjoy everything you do in life, son. Remember that.
And this is really important. Make sure to take breaks to give your ears a rest every hour or so, because there's no point in making music if you're deaf, unless your name happens to be Beethoven.
Oh, shit!
Or you just love music. I guess that's cool too. And all these tips from today and a bunch more I used in this video here, so make sure to watch that too.